Celebrities. Drugs. Two things that go together like babies and open second-story windows. They ain't doing no poor people drugs either. They got doctors giving them the good stuff. They can't get enough of it. In fact, they like them so much that if I wanted to kill a celebrity, I'd probably just give them a bunch of drugs until they died. Good thing that's never happened. But first, we have to start at the start of MJ. I know MJ can refer to Michael Jordan or Spider-Man's girlfriend, but use context clues, it means Michael Jackson today, okay? Shut up. Shut up. Michael Jackson was born in beautiful Gary, Indiana in 1958. Like any good parent in the modern day, MJ's father looked for any way to exploit his children for money. He forced his sons to form the Jackson 5. For hours every day, he'd force them to practice, beating them if they messed up.
Joe, can we get ice cream after this?
This will have no psychological effects on MJ later in life. Eventually, the group signed a record deal in '69 and were immediately successful. Everyone knew 11-year-old MJ was a prodigy, shooting him to stardom and removing any chance of him having a normal developmental childhood. This will have no psychological effects on MJ later in life. A lot of it was tabloid nonsense, but he was, as the French say, fucking weird. He wanted to buy all of Marvel just so he could play Spider-Man. He had an awesome pet chimpanzee named Bubbles who he brought on tour and taught to moonwalk. Wait, is he actually based? But most notably was his mysterious Neverland Ranch. Never mind, that is the most evilly named place I've ever heard of. There, he had his own personal amusement park where he could supposedly live out his childhood fantasies. Turns out being abused and forced into stardom as a child may have psychologically affected MJ, which is news to me. Yet despite the unfair media coverage, there were some valid scandals. Throughout his life, MJ befriended a bunch of children, who he'd often bring to Neverland Ranch. Bet you can't guess where this is going. MJ got into some legal trouble for touching kids multiple times, yet he was found not guilty at his trial for it in '05. Now, even today, MJ has multiple accusers and defenders, but that's not what this video is about, so like the US government, we'll just ignore it. All you gotta know is the cases nearly bankrupted MJ, and by the late 2000s, he had been off stage and out of the spotlight for years. So in March of 2009, MJ announced 10 new shows at the O2 in London, called This Is It. It was meant to be his final curtain call, but people went so crazy, they added 40 more shows. The ticket website was getting 16,000 requests per second. In a blink, all 50 were sold out. This was no end. This was a comeback. Quickly, there were hopes for a world tour, new albums, movies, a thriller casino, I guess. But MJ was 50 and hadn't performed in over a decade, so he spent weeks in LA rehearsing for his comeback. Little did he know he'd already performed his final show. On June 24th, 2009, MJ finished his late-night rehearsals and returned home to his rented LA mansion, the last time he'd ever be seen publicly. Around noon on the 25th, paramedics received a call about a man having a heart attack at the home. They rushed to the scene and entered the bedroom. There, they saw strange medical equipment surrounding a man so sick-looking they thought he was on his deathbed, until they realized it was an unresponsive MJ. Another man was there, claiming to be his doctor. He told them this had just happened happened, yet they could tell he'd been unresponsive for a while. MJ was rushed to the hospital where attempts to revive him failed. The king of pop was dead. Crowds around the hospital shut down streets. Google had so much traffic they thought it was a cyber attack. News and social media sites crashed. People walked out of their jobs to find TVs. If these weren't the same people who lived through 9/11, this would be their 9/11. Estimated viewers for his eventual funeral service ranged from the millions to billions. And everyone was asking the same question. What happened? Though everyone assumed it was just a heart attack, since MJ was the most famous person on Earth, the LAPD sent detectives to figure out what happened. When they got to the hospital, MJ's doctor, Conrad Murray, had already left. Attempts to call him went to voicemail. Weird, but no one had any reason to be suspicious. So they went to MJ's house, where the real red flags began. His bedroom looked like he was a Twitch streamer, aka a mess. Apart from the baby doll in his bed and the various ads with babies in them all over his room, not even gonna touch that, there was a confusing layout of medical equipment. Yet the room clearly wasn't fit for treatment. While searching, one detective found an empty bottle of something called propofol. Not knowing what it was, he decided to go to his neighbor who was a doctor to ask about it. Now, if I was investigating the most famous death since JFK, I probably wouldn't be discussing evidence with Bob from across the street. But I mean, this is the LAPD, man. They don't play by the rules. But it worked. The doctor told him that propofol was an anesthetic drug used in hospitals to put people under for surgeries. There was no reason it should have been in there. To properly use it, you need a team of doctors, emergency equipment, vital monitors, none of which was there. Now that was suspicious. They needed to talk to this Dr. Murray, and lucky for them, he was finally willing to. The dude might as well have shown up with a shovel because he was about to dig his own grave. Murray gave his side of the story, and it was a harrowing tale. MJ had been struggling with chronic insomnia, sometimes not being able to sleep for days. So he hired his good friend Dr. Murray to be his personal physician and help him get some rest. They tried a bunch of sedatives, but eventually Murray began giving MJ a small amount of propofol to help the poor man sleep. In fact, he'd done so for the past 60 days preparing for the comeback, but he was slowly trying to get him off it. On the night of his death, normal sedatives weren't working. As morning approached, they worried he'd have to cancel rehearsals, and so close to the show. That's no good. So MJ said he'd like to have some milk, which is what he called propofol, I guess. Murray finally agreed, giving him an injection. As he knocked out, Murray decided to go to the bathroom, but when he returned, he found MJ not breathing. He immediately sprung into action to save his friend, heroically performing CPR, giving passionate mouth-to-mouth, and telling security to call 911. And yet, it was no use. He'd done everything he could, but these things just happen sometimes, you know? Immediately, there were some issues with his story. Firstly, Murray was a cardiologist. Why was he giving sleep aids? Secondly, propofol isn't a sleep aid, but Murray had been using it incorrectly daily for months. Thirdly, he conveniently forgot to mention the propofol to paramedics or the hospital. But that wasn't his biggest mistake. Murray had been seen entering the house with his bag, but not leaving with it. Police asked him where it was, a question he did not have to answer. But for some reason, he told them exactly where it was hidden. When police found it, it was filled with evidence. Drugs, used bottles, needles, proving that at some point during this medical emergency, Murray stopped to clean up the room and then hid his bag. Seems like he knew he'd done something wrong. So to reiterate, Murray, for literally no reason, told police exactly where to find his bag of incriminating evidence, which is the #1 thing you should not do if you have a bag of incriminating evidence. This wasn't just health issues or an accident, and weeks later, the autopsy confirmed it. MJ was killed by a acute propofol intoxication, and it was ruled a homicide. Police began raiding Murray's properties and found out a lot about the dubious doctor. He was known as a man who would do things other doctors wouldn't. Unsurprisingly, his medical practice had been penalized by multiple medical boards, and it faced over $600,000 in fines for unpaid rent. He'd stopped paying the mortgage on his $1 million home. He'd had at least 7 children with 6 different women, being sued multiple times for unpaid child support. And yet, he always had money for the Stwip Quab, spending way more than he could afford. At this point, I can only assume he got his certifications from wherever Doc McStuffins did. That bitch did not get a doctorate. And his story kept falling apart. Despite saying he only gave MJ a little shot of propofol, the autopsy revealed he had enough in his system to drop a rhino. Turns out he had been turning vials upside down in IV bags and then connecting it straight to MJ. Mind you, even a slightly wrong amount of this stuff can kill you. No trained doctor would ever do this, let alone walk away when they did. He tried to cover up how much he was using, yet receipts showed he had bought over 5 gallons of the stuff. After checking his phone records, turns out Murray didn't just go to the bathroom. He was actually sending emails and having a phone call when he found MJ. And even when he did, he continued to make phone calls and clean up, not telling security until nearly an hour and a half later. Then, he started giving MJ CPR on his bed instead of a hard surface for some reason, using one hand to pump and the other to brace his back. Anyone who has taken a basic CPR class would know this is stupidly ineffective. And as a cardiologist, Murray would have 100% known that. Not only had he been insanely negligent, but he seemed like he didn't even want to save MJ. Yet the question remained, why? Why did he even use propofol? Why did MJ have this random cardiologist as his doctor anyways? Why wouldn't Murray try harder to save him? Well, investigators figured out a dark picture of MJ's final days. People could tell he wasn't doing well. He was messing up easy dances. He needed a teleprompter to remember lyrics he'd sung for decades. He was paranoid, talking to himself and claiming God was talking to him. He'd lost a bunch of weight, all symptoms of total sleep deprivation. While propofol leaves you feeling refreshed, it doesn't give you that REM sleep your brain needs to repair itself. MJ may have been the first person ever to go 60 days without REM sleep. Doctors said he probably would have died within days without it anyways. Even while dying, this dude couldn't stop breaking records. But sadly, it wasn't even Murray's idea to use propofol. It was MJ's. Rest had become his obsession, and after getting propofol for a procedure, he thought he'd found his answer. So he begged doctors to give him his milk like 60-year-olds on any woman's TikTok. They don't want you, man. They want me. Everyone turned him down, except the doctor known for doing what others wouldn't. So MJ had his show managers AEG Live hire Murray. Murray, who needed the money, couldn't refuse. The rest is history. Though MJ's family thought it was a bit more nefarious than that. MJ had recently told multiple people he thought someone was going to kill him, especially when talking about AEG. His family alleged MJ was worth more dead than alive, and some powerful people in the music industry had pressured Murray to keep doing the dangerous treatments. While investigators didn't really believe the conspiracy, they did think they had enough evidence to charge Murray with second-degree murder with a possible life sentence. But the district attorney was, as the French say, a little bitch. They were up for re-election, and they really didn't want another famous failure like with OJ. So instead, Murray would be arrested for involuntary manslaughter with a max sentence of only 4 years. That's politics. The family, fans, and even the police weren't happy, but it would have to do. The trial was, shocker, another media frenzy. Murray's lawyers wouldn't let him be seen in handcuffs, since that would hurt his reputation. I was okay with the whole killing the most famous person on earth thing, but when I saw him in handcuffs, I started to have a few second thoughts about this Dr. Murray fella. media. The prosecution laid out the true story of what happened. Michael Jackson had chronic insomnia and had become obsessed with propofol, willing to hire anyone who would give it to him. Conrad Murray, a sleazy doctor in need of cash, agreed to be paid $150,000 per month to be MJ's personal doctor. Even though propofol needs precise dosages and proper equipment, Murray thought that was a bunch of mumbo jumbo and streamlined it into MJ every night despite worsening health. On the night of his death, he negligently left MJ alone with a lethal amount of propofol and other drugs. While making phone calls and sending emails, he noticed MJ wasn't breathing, and instead of trying to help him, continued calling people and hid evidence to save his own ass. When he finally called for help, he gave the worst CPR known to man. Once paramedics came, he didn't tell them about the propofol and ran before police arrived. The defense used the classic political argument of, yeah, that was bad, but your guy did worse. They claimed that MJ was pressuring poor Murray to give him more and actually gave himself the lethal amount when Murray wasn't in the room, so it wasn't even his fault even. But apparently, I left my patient alone with a lethal amount of the drug they were addicted to isn't a very good defense. Murray was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years. There were celebrations outside the courthouse. MJ got justice despite the short sentence, which only got shorter considering Murray got out after only 2 years because of prison overcrowding laws and good behavior. With his medical licenses gone, he fled to Trinidad and Tobago to open a new clinic and insists he's an innocent man to this day. So did MJ get justice? Maybe, that's for you to judge. But I do know the legacy of Michael Jackson is just as strong as ever. His music is still popular. His fashion still iconic. His biopic has just become the most profitable of all time and mysteriously stops right before the 90s. I wonder why that is. Even his death raised awareness on how celebrities get their fix, which I guess nobody has ever listened to. So what's the moral of the story? Like and subscribe. Bye-bye.
Billie Jean is not my lover. Oh, she's just a girl who claims that I am the one. But the kid is not my son.